The grainy footage begins to roll. Black and white Soviet-era film stock, classified military documentation that was never meant to see daylight. On screen, 2 fighter jets streak across the sky. One is immediately recognizable, a MiG-21, known to NATO as a Fishbed, the backbone of communist air power since the early 1960s. But the other aircraft zooming through the clouds is more difficult to pin down. Like the MiG, it bears the red star and other markings of the Soviet Air Force, but its silhouette is all wrong. Sharp, swept-down nose, short, tapered wings, a pair of engines mounted side by side in the fuselage, completely unlike anything designed in the USSR. Perhaps it's some kind of experimental prototype. But no, there's something eerily familiar about it. As the footage continues to roll, suddenly, the horrifying truth becomes clear, raising an alarming question. What were the Soviets doing with an American Northrup F-5? The Northrup F-5. The Northrup F-5 series was first introduced in 1964 as a compact, highly agile fighter designed to deliver maximum combat effectiveness without the complexity and cost of larger jets. Arriving just in time for the escalation of the Vietnam War, considerable numbers of F-5s were supplied by the United States to their South Vietnamese allies. Throughout the conflict, the F-5 had proven itself in combat. Its compact design allowed for tight, precise turns, and its 2 General Electric J-85 engines pushed it to speeds over Mach 1.6. The aircraft's stable handling at low altitudes made it highly effective in ground attack missions, striking enemy supply lines, troop concentrations, and anti-aircraft positions. The upgraded F-5E Tiger II, introduced in the early 1970s, pushed the design even further. It retained the speed, agility, and close-quarters lethality of its predecessor, but added more powerful engines, an enlarged nose housing, improved radar, better avionics, and expanded weapons options, carrying a heavier armament of twin 20mm cannons and modern air-to-air missiles. Battle reports filtering back from Vietnam of the F-5's performance were encouraging. But in Moscow, Soviet military planners remained confident. Their MiG-21 boasted superior speed and thrust-to-weight ratios and had been designed specifically to counter Western fighters. Whatever capabilities this American aircraft possessed, they believed their own jets could handle it. Opportunity knocks. For years, the Soviets had studied the F-5 from a distance. Intelligence reports, photographs, and scraps of technical data hinted at its capabilities, but they craved the opportunity to study one up close. Their chance would finally come in 1975, as the Vietnam War rapidly approached its messy conclusion. With the U.S. having already withdrawn from its active role in the conflict, the South Vietnamese had been left to fend for themselves. In April, their 18th Division found itself fighting desperately to hold a line at the key crossroads of Xuan Loc, around 65 miles east of Saigon, supported by airstrikes launched from nearby Bien Hoa Air Base. But the assault was relentless. North Vietnamese sappers infiltrated Bien Hoa, destroying ammunition dumps, while heavy artillery and rocket barrages cratered the runways, severely restricting air operations. As the fighting closed in, the battered South Vietnamese forces pulled back, forming new defensive lines that were soon overwhelmed. By the final days of April, with Saigon itself about to fall, Bien Hoa was abandoned. The North Vietnamese troops who took the base soon realized that they had acquired much more than just the facility itself. Left at Bien Hoa were some of South Vietnam's most advanced American-supplied aircraft, including several F-5E Tiger IIs, which had only recently been delivered as part of the U.S. effort to bolster South Vietnamese air defenses. Unlike many aircraft lost or destroyed in combat, these F-5Es were left largely intact, and now they belonged to the communists. The prize was too valuable to remain in Vietnam. At least one F-5E, along with spare parts, technical manuals, and ground support equipment, was soon disassembled, crated up, and shipped to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Tiger II. During the summer of 1976, the captured Tiger II arrived at the secretive flight test center in Akhtubinsk, where captured Western aircraft were studied in detail. For Soviet engineers and military planners, it was a rare and precious opportunity. A frontline U.S. fighter that had already proven itself in combat against MiGs, now ready for exhaustive dissection. The Soviets could study everything, from the compact Westinghouse radar and avionics to the powerful General Electric J-85 engines. Every component offered clues into U.S. design philosophy, potentially revealing both American strengths and weaknesses that the Soviets could exploit. After wiring every component back together, it was given a new paint job to bring it in line with the rest of the Soviet air fleet. It was now ready to fly. Test pilot Vladimir Kondarov was among those assigned to evaluate the Tiger II. Even the first runway tests revealed surprises. The F-5 featured a nose strut extension system to help with takeoff, something Kondarov had only seen before on heavy Soviet bombers. But when the first high-speed taxi tests began, the American jet immediately exposed an unexpected vulnerability. The rough, grooved surface of the Soviet runway nearly shook the nose gear apart. It wasn't a design flaw, but a sign of how differently American aircraft were engineered, assuming smoother runways and better infrastructure. Once airborne, the F-5E revealed even more of its character. With its slats and flaps deployed into maneuvering configuration, the Tiger II transformed from what Kondarov called a heavy clodhopper into an agile, graceful opponent. During test runs, he found that while the MiG-21 he was used to would lose sight of the gun sight reticle under 3 Gs, the F-5 could maintain target tracking while pulling 6 Gs. This would be an enormous advantage in a dogfight, but there would only be one way to find out how much of an advantage it would be. Head-to-head. The Soviets soon arranged direct mock aerial battles, pitting the F-5E against a MiG-21. At high speeds, above 430 knots, both aircraft performed on equal terms. But as speed bled away and the fight descended into low-speed maneuvering, the Tiger II's superior aerodynamics allowed it to slowly but relentlessly maneuver into firing position behind the MiG-21. Kondarov recalled the outcome, saying, quote, "Every flight ended with the same result. The MiG-21 lost." The outcome disturbed not only the test pilots, but also Soviet engineers and Air Force staff, who repeatedly reviewed the data and questioned the crews. Kondarov admitted, quote, "Frankly, I was somewhat confused as well. But after personally flying the F-5, he understood that it was not thrust or raw power that made the difference, but aerodynamics and agility at lower speeds." In search of redemption, the MiG Bureau proposed a new test, pitting the F-5E against the more advanced MiG-23M. The chief of the research institute initially objected, saying it would be unfair to compare the Tiger II with the next-generation aircraft, but in the end, it was decided that the test would be conducted anyway, if nothing else as revenge for the MiG-21's humiliating defeat. Kondarov again flew the Soviet fighter, manually adjusting the MiG-23's wing sweep for maximum dogfighting performance. But even with his exceptional skill and relaxed angle of attack restrictions, after just a few minutes, the MiG-23 joined the MiG-21 in defeat. The lessons. The MiG-21 and MiG-23 had both been outmaneuvered in the very kind of close-range combat where they were expected to excel. And now, Kondarov and his colleagues had the unenviable task of traveling to Moscow to present the disappointing news to the Central Research Institution No. 30. At first, the researchers dismissed their findings. Confident in theoretical models and raw performance data, they pointed to graphs showing the MiG-21's supposed superiority, mostly based on its higher thrust-to-weight ratio. But as they read through the test report, the mood in the room shifted. The numbers on paper couldn't explain why, time after time, the F-5 was able to turn inside the MiGs and end up in firing position. It was an uncomfortable realization. The results contradicted the assumptions behind years of Soviet fighter design and pilot training. For the Soviet Air Force, the tests were an embarrassment, and the entire report was quickly classified and buried in secret archives. The engineers, too, took away important lessons. They studied the F-5's cockpit ergonomics, its maneuvering configuration with automatic slats and flaps, and its forgiving low-speed handling. These features would influence future Soviet designs like the Su-25, MiG-29, and Su-27, which incorporated better pilot interfaces, advanced aerodynamics, and exceptional maneuverability at high and low speeds. In the end, a single forgotten fighter, abandoned in the chaos of Vietnam's final days, had forced Soviet designers to confront uncomfortable truths and help shape the next generation of aircraft that would one day face off against the West. The bigger game. The F-5 incident was far from unique in the shadowy world of Cold War technology acquisition. Just months after the Soviet test concluded, the tables would turn dramatically. In September 1976, Soviet pilot Viktor Belenko shocked the world by defecting to Japan in a brand new MiG-25 Foxhound, at the time considered the fastest and most advanced interceptor on Earth. American intelligence officers could hardly believe their luck. The MiG-25 had terrified NATO planners for years, its mysterious capabilities spawning legends of a superfighter that could outrun anything the West possessed. But when U.S. engineers finally got their hands on Belenko's aircraft, they discovered the reality was far different from the myth. The Foxhound's massive engines and crude construction revealed Soviet weaknesses just as clearly as the F-5 had exposed American strengths. The F-5 sitting in that Soviet hangar was just one move in a chess match that spans generations and is unlikely to stop anytime soon.